toxic masculinity.
Black Lives Matter activist accuses white people of possessing and consuming black bodies. What?
So Bree Newsom is this super annoying Black Lives Matter person. She's basically accusing white people of cannibalism, and I guess this is some kind of metaphor. I'm not really sure I understand it fully, but let's go ahead and get into it. Bree Newsom compares whiteness to cannibalism, says it's time to abolish policing. As a follow-up to yesterday's viral tweet that we told you about, where BLM activist Bree Newsom discounted one girl attempting to murder another girl as just teenagers having a normal teenage fight. This is the language they've adopted, like on the left. They're calling it a knife fight. They're like, oh, these girls are just getting into a knife fight. No big deal.
No.
Okay, first of all, knife fight. Usually both parties have knives. That's one thing. And then the other thing is like, they do realize that you can kill someone with a knife, right? I mean, I don't understand what they think. They're just like, oh, they're just roughhousing with knives. It's like, what do they think? It's like, ching, ching, ching. Oh, that was fun. Okay, we're done with that. No. You stab somebody with a knife, the person dies. I mean, if you stab them in the right spot, they can bleed out. You can hit vital organs. You know, there's lots of different ways to kill somebody with a stabbing them with a knife. This idea that, a knife fight, it's just a knife fight. I mean, it's like they think it's West Side Story. As if they think that these two girls were like, and then they went into song, right? And then the cop came and they went into the number where they were going to start stabbing each other. And the cop was like, bah, 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 bah. And they're like, what did you do? You ruined it. We had this beautiful moment. We were all singing. Everybody was happy. And then you killed that girl. That's just, oh my gosh, that police officer is terrible. No, the girl was trying to murder somebody. And as tragic as it is that she's dead, I don't know. I don't know how tragic it is.
I don't know. I did like curious. Can we not talk about Black Lives Matter anymore, please? Like,
I know.
Third story today, I'm like having a headache.
All right, let's see here. So anyway, so she tweeted. She was the first one that I saw on the news that had tweeted that it was just two teenage girls having a fight. What's the big deal? People have been fighting for thousands of years. Yeah, you know who else has been fighting for thousands of years? Murderers. Murderers been murdering people for thousands of years. Should we just say like, oh, because it's been happening for thousands of years, it's okay? Murder? Stupid woman. All right, so her name's Bree Newsom. She writes, teenagers have been having fights, including fights involving knives, for eons. Excuse me. We do not need police to address these situations by showing up to the scene and using a weapon against one of the teenagers. What does she think a knife is? That's also a weapon, you stupid woman. Y'all need to help. Oh, shoot. Not need to help. You all need help, she says. Y'all need help. I mean that sincerely. Yeah, we need help. You're a lunatic. I mean that sincerely. Okay, let's see here. She's now claiming that not enough is said about white pathological obsession with possessing and consuming black people's bodies. In other words, cannibalism. There is this weird thing where people who are obsessed with race will point to conservatives reacting to their obsession with race and going, "Why are you so obsessed with race?" It's like it's kind of like a joke that you see sometimes in sitcoms or comedy films, where like a girl will come up and like whisper to a guy and he'll say, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" And she'll go, "Oh, why are you obsessed with me?" And obviously the girl initiated the conversation. That's kind of an old joke we used to do in school. If you were sitting next to somebody, girls used to do this more often than guys, but guys would do it sometimes too. And a girl might come over and say, this is kind of a dirty trick, but it was quite a bit of fun. When I was about 12, this was a trend. A little girl would come sit next to a little boy. Well, 12-year-olds, I don't know how little they are, but kids. A girl would go sit next to a boy, and she'd just suddenly yell out, "No, I will not go out with you." Now, of course, he didn't ask her out. She just yells that, and everyone in the class is like, "What the hell?" And that was like a big popular thing that girls were doing. The first few times it happens, you're like, "What the hell's going on?" And then everybody starts laughing. You kind of figure out what's happening. And then it just becomes kind of a joke. But
it's funny.
It's funny. I think it's funny. Yeah, it was funny when I was a kid, seeing people do that. Anyway, why did I bring that up? I've lost track. Let me get back to the article here. Getting back on track. So this girl writes, I don't think enough is said about white pathological obsession. Yeah, so this is, every time I hit the dang thing, these shouldn't be links. They should just be pictures. Yeah, so she's saying that, gosh, why are white people so obsessed with me? It's like, we're not obsessed with you. You're the one talking about race, lady. Okay, and she says, and little attention is given to cannibal-like tendencies of whiteness, particularly the disturbing obsession with dismembering and possessing people with dark skin, which I don't understand that at all. I don't even understand what the metaphor is. If it's a metaphor, I don't understand that. I mean, I like dark meat chicken, but I think that's true of everybody, right? Everybody. I mean, the white part is too dry. Everybody knows that. All right, let's see here. Actually, that's a bit. I want to do this bit with one of my black friends where we just like talk like where you go and you talk about all the black things in the world that are bad, and then they talk about all the white things in the world that are bad. It's kind of like a joke thing, like white chicken. That's a good one. White chicken, far drier than dark chicken, much tastier. Okay, let's have a look here. She writes, because the normalization of white supremacy means so much emphasis is placed on otherizing. Woo, there's a nice word. She just made that up. Otherizing the non-white individual, little attention is given to the cannibal-like tendencies of whiteness, particularly the disturbing obsession with dismembering and possessing people with dark skin. This is like literal insanity. I'm not really sure how to describe this in any other way. This is clearly somebody who is mentally ill. Let's see here. And then whoever wrote this article wrote, reminder, these are not people who we should be taking seriously. Yeah, you think? She says, I know people are uncomfortable when I compare whiteness to cannibalism, but I don't know how else to explain a culture that for centuries has fixated with killing black people and possessing/consuming their bodies in some form or fashion. Nobody is consuming anybody. What the hell are you talking about? I can understand the owning thing because there was slavery, a couple hundred years ago. It's so weird. It's okay. I get that slavery was a bad thing, right? I mean, you could say slavery was a bad thing. We all know slavery was a bad thing. Okay. But slavery didn't start until pretty late in the development of Western civilization. It wasn't until, I think, something like the 16th century, I think, that slavery kicked off. And then it wasn't until like the 18th century that it really became like a big business. So it was only really a hugely significant thing for maybe 200 years. But it was certainly a bad thing for a long time. But it's been 200 years since we abolished slavery, almost 200 years. And we've been trying to kind of fix the situation since then. And there was also slavery long before that, usually with, people enslaving people of the same race, sometimes of different races, but and there's still slavery today in parts of the world. And so to sit here and say, oh, that was the worst thing that ever happened in history, and we got to keep talking about it in new ways and liken it to cannibalism, which I don't think ever happened. I don't know of any slave owners that literally cannibalized their slaves. I'm not sure this ever happened, although I'm sure it would make a great novel that she could write, and she could probably make a ton of money on that. Let's see here. She says, I think that because whiteness has been the dominant force, it's sometimes the norm for white supremacists, scientists, all those white supremacist scientists out there doing their white supremacy science, to normalize the othering of non-white people, and few people, if any, have turned that lens on whiteness to examine the pathology of white people's obsession with skin color. Again, I talk about this like every show, because every show I read some nonsense gibberish from somebody who uses a bunch of like esoteric language or convoluted sentences. The sentence structure or the way that things are expressed is so convoluted and difficult to understand that people who maybe don't want to use the brain energy to break it down will just accept, okay, this person's smart and I'm just going to believe what they're saying. Even though I don't understand it, I'm just going to accept whatever it is that I perceive that they're saying because they sound so smart. But like, I think in the case of this woman, she doesn't even sound smart. She just sounds like a crazy person that doesn't know how to speak English properly. And so, but she's trying. She's clearly trying. I mean, otherizing is not a word. She just made up a word. The otherizing of white people, and few people, if any, have turned that lens. They often say things like turn a lens toward, they have certain kinds of terms and turns of phrase that they like to use. God, that left annoys the hell out of me. All right. So she says, she added that she thinks police are now going to intentionally murder black people in retaliation for the Chauvin rig. Yeah, this is another weird thing. So somebody else, Puff the Magic Hater, somebody named Mrs. Kelly M. Hayes, who looks white, writes, somebody emailed me today asking if the verdict might at least save some lives by creating hesitation among some police who don't want to go to prison themselves. I told them the truth, that I believe police will take more lives in retaliation. Yeah, because of the Chauvin trial, all these police officers who loved Derek Chauvin so much, and they had no idea who he was, are going to go around and start shooting black people. And of course she agrees with that. She says, exactly. And that's what we're seeing. Yeah, this black chick who tried to murder some other black chick was shot by a white police officer. And as he was aiming his gun, he thought, this is for Derek.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. Except that's not what's happening. I also read, I don't know where I saw this. I watched it on TV. Maybe it was Sky News. Maybe it was a YouTube video. I'm not sure. But some statistics were released for 2020 based on all the people who had, all the cities that had a lot of protests, like a lot of Black Lives Matter protests. And they wanted to see if police shootings had gone down. And police shootings had gone down in those cities. They estimated that something like 300 fewer suspects have died by the hands of police since the protest started. But because police aren't policing as much in those areas, mm-hmm. they also estimated that about 6,000 people have actually been murdered because police didn't intervene in crimes. And there was no threat of police intervening in crimes. So in areas in which Black Lives Matter have been protesting consistently in 2020, you had 300 fewer police shootings, but you had 6,000 more murders. So they're swapping police shootings for murders.
They murder themselves, yeah.
And the problem with that is that who gets killed in a police shooting? Usually it's somebody who's done something criminal.
Yeah.
Who gets killed in a murder? Oftentimes it's an innocent victim, a child, mm-hmm. or a grandma, or somebody like that. So you've substituted 300 police shootings of probably criminals for 6,000 murders of presumably, at least some of them, innocent people. This is not a good trade-off, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, let's go back. Except that's not what's happening, says the author of this article. And this girl, Bree Newsom, says, police aren't just shooting black people and children, they're emptying their clips into them. No, they're not. No, they're not. Let's see. They're oh, man. It's just funny. It's funny. It's funny to me. I mean, it's not. It's a very serious subject, but like she's so absurd. She actually makes it funny. They're emptying their clips into people. The lies are so ridiculous. And the problem with this is that people believe her. People who subscribe to her Twitter, whatever. I'm curious as to how many people she has. Let's see here. How many followers? She has almost 500,000 followers on Twitter. That's crazy. I have like 20,000.
Not bad.
No, it's terrible. Mine's terrible.
Still.
I'm smarter than that, people. Subscribe to my Twitter. All right, let's see here. She says, if he was trained to... Okay, so this is from the Associated Press. The fatal shooting of 16-year-old Micaiah Bryant in Columbus, Ohio, as she swung a knife toward another girl, has raised questions about why the officer chose to fire his weapon. The city's police chief points to the officer's training. And then this woman says, if he was trained to kill kids, then it's time to abolish policing. The alternative that I don't really hear that much is that he could have used like a taser or something like that. But I don't know if he was even equipped with a taser. But if you were equipped with a taser, could have used a taser. I think that's actually a reasonable thing to say.
Well,
But when you're fighting lethal force, it's often good to use lethal force. But of course, a taser could have been possible.
Situation is like kind of, I don't know. It's
It's
complicated.
a messy, complicated situation.
Yeah.
And I would also like to say that she was a big girl. Okay, she was a big girl.
For
It's
15,
impossible
yeah.
to know in that moment when things are going that fast that she was that young, right? She could have been 40 for all he knew. She just looked like a maniac wielding a knife. And then a lot of people have posted these. This has become quite popular. Bree Newsom's tweet about how teenagers have been having knife fights for eons gets the gift treatment. This is actually a pretty funny story. So basically everybody, and this is why I was talking earlier about the whole idea about the Jets and the Sharks going into a musical because of these tweets. So everybody has been tweeting scenes from movies, either scenes that were terrifying, because, to indicate that actually knives are dangerous, or scenes that are hilarious to suggest that this is how they think that the fight was supposed to go. It was like a scene from a musical. And so they've got here like the Princess Bride sword fighting. This is from Game of Thrones, Indiana Jones, obviously, something from The Simpsons. I don't know what this movie is. I'd like to watch that movie, actually. I don't know what that is. And so all these different scenes from movies. And it's funny. It's just, it's just funny stuff. So, people are making light of it because, and honestly, like, it is a serious subject. It is a serious thing that happened. And this woman, this Bree Newsom chick, for her to say such absurd, ridiculous things, she just makes the situation laughable.
Yeah.
She actually does a disservice to the woman who lost her life by being so ridiculous about it. She like encourages people to laugh about the situation, including myself. I mean, I laughed at some of those memes. I mean, it's pretty funny. But when you go back to the core of it and see that this woman attacked somebody with a knife and then was shot to death, I mean, it's a pretty horrible situation. We're laughing about it because this woman says such ridiculous things. Obviously, we're not laughing at the fact the woman was killed, but we're laughing at the response to it by some of these people. But it's sad. It's a shame. But we've talked about this enough, I think. However, I will ask you one more time because people will be mad at me if I don't. Do you have anything to say about this, darling?
I am sick of hearing about Black Lives Matter and other stuff like this.
Okay.
Literally sick.
Sounds good. You want to read comments and questions?
I do not.
All right.
I'm kidding.
News is over. News is over. We're going to read your comments and questions. If you have anything to say about this, please let us know. I'm curious as to what you guys have to say about this. We've mostly been covering this very specific thing, but if you guys want to bring up something else, feel free to. But I'm curious what you guys think about this. It looks like we've got quite a few statements already. People have said something. Do you want me to start, or do you want to? What do you got? What do you got?
Well, the first super chat was from Frank Kerr.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think that's the first super chat. Yeah, MD and.
Okay, you want me to read it? Or you want to read it?
You can read it.
Okay. Maryland and Virginia states gave territory to establish the capital in D.C. If it becomes a state, those states deserve their territory back. How did they did not give up that land to create a new state? It's I actually saw somebody create like a gerrymandered border around like all the state like all the different federal buildings. Mm-hmm. And they said, okay, we'll give all the rest of the DC land back to Maryland and Virginia, and just the federal buildings will be Washington, D.C., where nobody lives because there's no residences. And that'll answer the question. And I thought that was a perfectly valid solution. I'm like, yeah, put the citizens back in those states if they so desperately want senators. Toxic Masculinity. Weekdays, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific.